Adam and Eve lost their dream home in one night. Welcome back to True Stories from the Bible, where we bring ancient scripture to life with drama, emotion, and powerful storytelling. Today's episode unravels one of the most gripping and heartbreaking tales ever told, the fall of Adam and Eve. How did they lose everything in a single night? What caused humanity's very first home to be locked forever? Join me as we walk to the garden gates and witness the devastating moment when Adam and Eve lost their dream home, all because of one decision.
Imagine having everything you've ever dreamed of, living in a paradise filled with beauty, freedom, and peace. Then, in just one night, losing it all. How did Adam and Eve lose their dream home? And what caused them to make a choice they would regret forever? Let's dive into the incredible story of how one mistake turned paradise into an exile. Adam and Eve lived in what can only be described as the perfect home. The Garden of Eden was their dream home, a place of absolute beauty, serenity, and abundance. Picture lush green trees with fruit so delicious they didn't need to hunger for anything. Streams of crystal clear water flowed, providing everything they could ever need. They were free, without fear, without pain, and most importantly, without worry. In this paradise there was no sin, no sickness, and no suffering. It was the epitome of God's creation, and Adam and Eve were its caretakers. They were the crown of God's work, living with a deep connection to Him, and everything was good. The garden was theirs to enjoy, and all God asked of them was one simple command: do not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. A single tree was set apart, and everything else in the garden was theirs for the taking. Their life was a dream, peaceful and full of promise. But this perfect life was about to change. Now let's explore the moment when everything shifted. It started with Eve. One fateful day, as she wandered through the garden, something unusual happened. A serpent, who was unlike any creature they had encountered before, spoke to her. In fact, no animal had ever spoken to her before. Yet the voice seemed familiar somehow, like it had always known her. She stepped closer. The serpent, sly and cunning, asked, "Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?" Eve responded that they could eat from every tree except one, the tree in the middle of the garden. That tree, she explained, was off limits, for God had warned them that eating from it would bring death. But the serpent, with its deceitful wisdom, immediately contradicted God's words. "You will not certainly die," it said. "God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." Eve was intrigued. She had never considered the idea that eating the fruit could make her more like God. The allure of wisdom, of knowing what God knew, of being elevated, was a temptation that she couldn't resist. The serpent made the fruit seem so appealing. It was not just food. It was a path to greater knowledge, to power, to being something more than just a human. Eve looked at the fruit. It was beautiful, and she believed the serpent. She took a bite, and then, feeling the weight of the decision, she handed the fruit to Adam. He too was enticed by the promise of wisdom. Together, they made a choice that would change the course of history. They ate the forbidden fruit. In that single moment of disobedience, everything shifted. Their innocence, their purity was shattered. They became aware of their nakedness and felt a sudden wave of shame. What had once been paradise was now tainted. They heard the sound of God walking in the garden, and for the first time they were afraid. They tried to hide from God, but He called out to them, "Where are you?" Adam sat beside a stream when Eve approached him. She looked different, anxious, flushed, her eyes darting. In her hand, the fruit. He knew what it was. In that moment, he could have said no. He could have turned away. But instead, out of love, out of fear, or perhaps rebellion, he took it. He bit, and paradise shattered. They scrambled to cover themselves with fig leaves. Their hearts pounded. Guilt clawed at them from the inside. For the first time, they knew what it meant to be ashamed. As dusk settled over Eden, a breeze picked up. Then came that sound, God's presence moving through the trees. The voice that had once brought peace now struck fear into their bones. "Adam, where are you?" The voice was calm, but it cut through their hearts like lightning. They crouched behind thick bushes, holding their breath. But God already knew. Adam stepped forward, trembling. "I heard you coming," he said, his voice thin with fear, "and I was afraid because I was naked." "Who told you that you were naked?" God asked. "Have you eaten from the tree I commanded you not to eat from?" Adam looked down. "The woman, she gave it to me, and I ate." God turned to Eve. "What is this you have done?" "The serpent deceived me," she said quietly, "and I ate." God's voice thundered through the garden. To the serpent, "Because you have done this, Cursed are you above all livestock. You will crawl on your belly and eat dust all the days of your life. I will put enmity between you and the woman. Her offspring will crush your head, and you will strike his heel. To Eve, I will increase your pain in childbirth. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. And to Adam, because you listened to your wife and ate from the tree, cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil, you will eat from it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles. By the sweat of your brow, you will eat until you return to the dust. The consequences were devastating, but even then there was grace. God made garments of skin for Adam and Eve, clothing them, covering their shame. It was a gesture of both mercy and sorrow. Something had to die for their sin to be covered. The first sacrifice. And then came the moment they feared most. God led them to the edge of Eden. Behind them, the garden shimmered in beauty. Before them, a dry and unfamiliar land. They turned one last time to look. Then a blaze of light. God placed cherubim, mighty angels with flaming swords to guard the entrance. Eden was closed. Forever. They were exiled. Out of paradise. Out of perfect union. And into a world of pain, struggle, and death. The serpent that deceived them wasn't just an animal. He was the enemy of God, Satan, once an angel, now fallen, who sought to steal worship and destroy the very beings God had made in his image. In his pride, Satan wanted to rule, and in tempting Eve, he struck the first blow. But God had already declared war. One day, the woman's offspring would crush the serpent's head. That prophecy, hidden in judgment, was the beginning of redemption. Adam and Eve tried to rebuild outside the garden. They tilled the soil. Eve bore children, Cain and Abel. But even that brought more heartbreak. Sin had entered the world, and its effects multiplied. The perfect world was gone, but the memory of Eden remained. Sometimes late at night, Eve would weep. She would remember walking beside rivers of light, hearing the voice of God, never fearing. Adam would hold her close, but nothing could replace what they had lost. Yet in their hearts, they held on to the promise that one day, someone would come, someone who could restore what was broken. The story of Adam and Eve isn't just ancient history. It's the beginning of our own story. We all face temptation. We all fall. Just like Adam and Eve, we're not left without hope. Their story is one of paradise lost, but also of grace given. Because even in the fall, God began a rescue plan, one that would reach across time, through prophets, kings, and generations, until one day, a man named Jesus would walk the earth, called the second Adam. He would face temptation and overcome it. He would bear the weight of sin and undo what was done that night in Eden. But that is a story for another time. What would you have done in Eve's place? Do you think the serpent's words would have worked on you? Or would you have walked away? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if this story moved you, like and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe to True Stories from the Bible for more powerful and emotional journeys into Scripture. These aren't just old tales, they're stories that still speak to us, challenge us, and offer hope. Thanks for watching, and may you always choose the voice of truth over the whisper of temptation. We'll see you in the next story entitled, A Hard Life Begins.